Crew from the Royal Mail ship Picardy board the trimaran, floating aimlessly in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. All they find on board are a pair of logbooks with cryptic journal entries that shatter the illusion of Donald Crowhurst. In March 1968, Donald Crowhurst sees an article in the Sunday Times announcing a challenge to sail solo, non-stop around the globe. The race is inspired by the 1967 solo ocean adventures of Sir Francis Chichester, who sailed single-handedly around the world with only one stop over the span of 226 days. The Sunday Times asks Chichester to sit on the panel of judges for the race they're sponsoring. The Golden Globe race will be the world's first solo, non-stop round-the-globe yacht race with a tempting prize of £5,000 for the fastest circumnavigation and the glory of being the first to complete the journey without stopping. Sailors must navigate a complete loop around the globe from one point in the British Isles and returning to the same location without stopping at any port or receiving assistance. They have to rely on their own skills, the equipment on the boat, their ability to repair anything that breaks, and to restock food or water along the way by capturing or making what they can. Sailors will travel through latitudes and oceans known for their challenging conditions with long stretches of isolation. The race has some rules. Sailors must depart between the 1st of June and the 31st of October 1968. Which gives them at most 7 months to prepare. But they can time their departure during that window based on their own planning and favorable weather conditions. The fastest time with no stops nor outside assistance wins the prize money, and the first across the line takes home the Golden Globe trophy. Anyone can enter with no specific qualifications or experience. Donald Crowhurst was born in 1932 to British parents Charles and Evelyn Crowhurst while living in India. His mother longed for a daughter, and she dressed him as a girl until he was 7 years old. As a teenager, his family returned to England, leaving his parents' retirement savings invested in a sporting goods factory in India, which then burned down during a riot. Donald's formative years were plagued by embarrassment and financial strain for himself and his parents. His mom, Evelyn, battled her own demons and even attempted suicide. In 1948, at the age of 16, Donald's dad, Charles, passed away, and because they had no money, he was forced to drop out of school. He started an apprenticeship at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, a British research and development organization, where he developed an interest in invention. In the mid-1950s, he joined the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers in the British Army, where he maintained and repaired their equipment and machinery, but he also got himself in trouble and ended up leaving the army. In 1957, he married his long-standing girlfriend, Claire O'Leary. In 1962, he started a company called Electron Utilization, where he combined his interests and skills in electronics and marine navigation. The company specialized in marine electronics with Crowhurst's own invention, the Navigator, as its flagship product. The Navigator was a handheld radio direction finder designed to help sailors navigate by taking bearings on marine and aviation radio beacons. You point the Navigator in the direction of a radio beacon and take a compass bearing when the signal strength is at its peak. You then draw a line on your chart using that compass bearing, starting at the radio beacon, which has a fixed location on your chart. When you take 2 or more bearings from different permanent objects, you can get a fix on your position. Quite a useful piece of kit in a time before GPS. The product showed promise, which attracted an offer for investment of £8,500 from Pi Radio, a British electronics company and leading manufacturer of consumer radios and televisions. But Pi Radio pulled out of the investment, which led to financial struggles for Electron Utilization. The Navigator didn't take off, and Crowhurst resorted to promoting it at local boat shows. When Crowhurst reads about the race in the Sunday Times, he sees it as a golden opportunity. His business is on shaky ground, and the £5,000 prize money is an attractive prospect. But it's not just a financial boost. It's also a path to fame and the attention that could turn his struggling business around. Crowhurst is a novice sailor, but he believes his engineering skills and his navigator give him a technical edge in the race. He starts planning a strategy, and as the underdog, he needs to outthink the more experienced sailors. Perhaps Donald Crowhurst feels he has something to prove, but winning this race will take more than just a winning strategy. He needs a boat that's faster than his competitors. When he sails into the low latitudes of the roaring 40s and furious 50s, there's no landmass to tame the wind and waves. He and the boat will need to stand up to the pounding weather. Across the oceans, he'll have to fight his own demons to remain calm and focused through the isolation and physically demanding months at sea. In April 1968, Crowhurst approaches Stanley Best, a local businessman, for the funding he needs for a boat and equipment. Best agrees to sponsor Crowhurst for the race with certain conditions. If Crowhurst doesn't start or pulls out early from the race, he needs to repay the money that Crowhurst doesn't have. To secure his investment, Best takes out a mortgage on Crowhurst's business and house, which basically means that if Crowhurst drops out, then Best will own his business and his house. With the funding secured, he officially enters the race, and now he needs a boat. In May, with 6 months to prepare, Crowhurst starts the search for a suitable boat. At first, he tries to buy Gypsy Moth 4, the vessel Sir Francis Chichester used for his solo circumnavigation. The Gypsy Moth 4 is a 16-meter ketch made from marine-grade aluminium alloy, which is durable and resistant to the corrosive effects of salt water. The idea of using Chichester's boat seems poetic, but the idea doesn't materialize. On the 1st of June, the race window officially opens. The first to set sail is John Ridgway, a British sailor who departs from Inishmore Island on the English Rose 4, a 9-meter sloop. After striking out on buying a fast, reliable boat, Crowhurst commissions a British boatyard based in East Sussex, Cox Marine, to build a trimaran for the race. A trimaran has a central hull to provide most of the boat's buoyancy and to house the living quarters. 2 smaller hulls are attached on either side of the main hull by crossbeams to provide stability and balance that prevent the trimaran from tipping or capsizing. In the 1960s, trimarans weren't very common, and for Crowhurst to commission a relatively new design to be constructed with such a short deadline is an ambitious undertaking. Trimarans have limited stability in rough seas, and if they capsize, it's virtually impossible to right them. But they're fast, and Crowhurst hopes the trimaran's advantages will outweigh the risks. This is a strategic move for Crowhurst, who wants to outwit his opponents. Cox Marine follows Crowhurst's specifications for a lightweight, streamlined vessel built from materials like marine plywood and fiberglass. On the 14th of June, Robin Knox Johnston departs from Falmouth, England. He sets sail in his 10-meter ketch, the Suhaili, which is slow, but it's sturdy and well-tested. Knox Johnston's an experienced sailor and officially the 3rd entrant in the race. In July, 3 more competitors set sail. Crowhurst's vessel is still under construction and he feels the clock ticking. Cox Marine installs the main mast and rigging wires designed to balance the 3-hull configuration while keeping the setup and adjustment as straightforward as possible for a single-handed sailor. The design and lightweight materials prioritize ease of use for Crowhurst as a solo operator over the strength and redundancy to withstand sustained stress over time. From what I've read, I feel there are distinct similarities between Crowhurst's approach and Stockton Rush from the Titan disaster. It seems to me like they were both in a rush to build something innovative to prove their standing in the world. On the 22nd of August, Bernard Moitessier, an experienced French sailor, departs from Plymouth in his 12-meter steel ketch, Joshua. He's completed long-distance voyages in the past, making him one of the favorites to win the race. In late August, Crowhurst's vessel is ready to go in the water. He names the boat Tynemouth Electron as a tip of the hat to his company Electron Utilization. To get the boat ready by the end of October, Crowhurst doesn't have much time for sea trials. He needs to test the stability and balance of the vessel under sail, to evaluate the rigging setup, to familiarize himself with the handling, and to find any other issues. He allocates a few days and discovers a number of problems. The vessel is manageable in calm conditions and the 3 hulls provide good stability, but the lightweight design makes the boat more sensitive to gusts and sudden changes in wind direction. A team of sailors could respond to these changes quickly, but trimming and balancing the sails requires precise coordination, which is challenging for a solo sailor, much less a novice like Crowhurst. There are minor leaks in the hull which suggest the vessel is not completely waterproof, possibly because the construction is rushed. The rigging is functional, but it's not tested in strong wind or rough seas, and the sea trial extends from a few days up to a few weeks. Crowhurst is getting to know the boat's shortcomings and starts to question his own abilities, and his lack of ocean sailing experience weighs heavily on him. He tells his wife Claire and his sponsor Stanley Best, but he feels trapped. Crowhurst is afraid of the public embarrassment he'll face by pulling out after securing sponsorship, and backing out means he'll lose his business and his home. On the 16th of September, Nigel Tetley departs from Plymouth in a 12-meter trimaran named Victress. As more sailors enter the race, and with the deadline to depart bearing down on him, Crowhurst tries to fix the list of problems he's found during the sea trials. In October, the Tynemouth Electron is not quite ready. Crowhurst is conflicted about his ability to complete the race, but with financial ruin at stake, he decides to push through. He hopes to at least make progress and end the race with dignity. On the 31st of October, the last day the rules allow, Crowhurst departs from Tynemouth, Devon. He bids farewell to his wife Claire and his 4 children who wish him a safe voyage. But his boat isn't ready. Supplies for the voyage aren't yet stowed, and in his haste, he doesn't pack all the equipment and spare parts he needs for the voyage. When Crowhurst sets sail, the 3 race leaders are Knox Johnston, Motessier, and Tetley. 9 sailors enter the race, but I'm going to concentrate on the 4 that I think help build the clearest picture. Robin Knox Johnston is a British sailor. He's sailed long distances in his boat Suhaili, so he knows how it handles and he's comfortable sailing on his own. In the first few months, he pushes south into the Atlantic, making steady, methodical progress despite heavy seas. I struggle to find an exact date, but it takes him about 4 or 5 months to sail as far as the Cape of Good Hope, which is roughly the southern tip of Africa, and then east into the Southern Ocean. The Frenchman, Motessier, was planning on doing his own circumnavigation before the Sunday Times approached him to ask that he set off from the British Isles and take part in the race. I think partly because he's French and probably doesn't like the British, but mostly he doesn't like the idea of competition in sailing. He tells them where they can stick their trophy. But a few days later, he decides to enter the race. It takes the Frenchman roughly 3 months to round the Cape of Good Hope and head east into the Southern Ocean, making better speed than Knox Johnston. Nigel Tetley served in the Royal Navy during World War II, where he developed significant maritime experience. After the war, he continued sailing recreationally. He enters the race with a trimaran similar to Crowhurst's, which he reinforces on a limited budget. He hits the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa in around 4 months. Donald Crowhurst is the last to leave, and he worries that the boat won't hold up in the low latitudes, but decides to press on. Within 2 months, he seems to have settled in, covering incredible distances and even setting a new world record of 243 nautical miles in a 24-hour period. In just 2 months, around Christmas 1968, he reports that he's off Cape Town and about to turn into the Southern Ocean. The sailors have long-range radios on board, which allow them to communicate with the outside world, except Motessier, who didn't want the intrusion. The radio signal can reach as far as 3,000 miles, and from there the message can be relayed. They can also give passing ships packages of photos and mail, but they can't accept anything from other sailors. I must admit, I'm not exactly sure how the radio worked back then. Maybe someone can write in the comments to say if a relay station would have an idea of where a radio transmission was coming from. Or perhaps when a message is relayed from a boat, which relay station on land would pick it up? Would the signal be stronger from one radio station compared to another, and so able to isolate where a signal is coming from? In December 1968, competitors were at sea for anywhere between 2 and 7 months. Tetley reports the challenges of keeping his trimaran vessel balanced. Crowhurst is sailing the same type of vessel, but Crowhurst is starting to make much faster progress than expected. The news makes for exciting reading, and the papers love to see the competition heating up. Even Sir Francis Chichester, who sailed this route in Gypsy Moth 4, which inspired this race, is surprised at the speed of Crowhurst's trimaran. Going into January 1969, the frontrunners, Knox Johnston, Motessier, and Tetley, are racing through the Southern Ocean in the roaring 40s and furious 50s. Knox Johnston has radio troubles, Motessier seems to be taking it all in his stride, but Tetley's boat is taking a beating. These low latitudes are notorious for their incredible wind speeds and challenging ocean conditions. There's no landmass to soften the force of the wind as it travels around the bottom end of the globe. The three sailors fight their way past Cape Horn, reaching the bottom of South America in January, February, and March, respectively. They report exhausting conditions, but their constant updates reassure organizers of their progress. With Crowhurst, these are the last of 4 sailors still in the race. 5 have retired. The conditions just too brutal to even make it to the Southern Ocean. Crowhurst's reports put him within striking distance of the frontrunners, rivaling Tetley's speed and performance. His updates give favorable winds, with the Tynemouth Electron operating at an efficient level, and the organizers are amazed at Crowhurst's progress. But he also says he's having problems with his generator and will turn off his radio. In February 1969, Knox Johnston leads the pack and turns northward into the Atlantic. Tetley continues to perform well, but reports his concerns about the structural strain on his vessel. In March, Motessier, the Frenchman, should have been northbound back towards Europe, but he decides to stick it to the man and carries on sailing the Southern Ocean one more time around the globe. He shoots a slingshot message onto a ship in Cape Town that says he's not interested in the race and he's carrying on to the Pacific Islands. In April 1969, Knox Johnston has the lead and closes in on the finish line. Tetley is determined to finish the race and secure a respectable position. He's tracking Crowhurst's progress and feels that his competitor will win the time trial. Then, Crowhurst re-establishes radio contact and reports that he's rounded Cape Horn and is heading north through the Atlantic, gaining on the others. The race is down to 3 British sailors. On the 22nd of April 1969, Knox Johnston finishes the race, arriving in Falmouth and winning the trophy for first across the line. After 312 days at sea, he's the first solo sailor to circumnavigate the globe non-stop. Throughout May, Tetley and Crowhurst push to finish the race. As he approaches the Azores, Tetley drives Victress hard to try and outpace Crowhurst. But by pushing his boat so hard after the battering it had in the Southern Ocean, on the 30th of May, Tetley's boat capsizes and he's out of the race. Crowhurst is the only competitor left to finish the race, and he's rapidly closing in on the finish line. On the 29th of June, Crowhurst reports that he'll arrive in England within days. The story of the underdog sailor completing a solo non-stop circumnavigation takes the world by storm. But days pass and there's no update from Crowhurst. On the 10th of July 1969, the Tynemouth Electron is found drifting 2,500 nautical miles away near the middle of the Atlantic, and Crowhurst is nowhere to be found. His logbooks and journals tell a different story about Crowhurst's voyage. 8 months earlier, when Crowhurst set off at the end of October 1968, he realizes the true extent of the Tynemouth Electron's problems. The trimaran is prone to leaks. It doesn't have enough ballast to keep it stable in rough water, let alone the Southern Ocean. And its untested rigging can't withstand the rigors of an open ocean circumnavigation. The dangerous waters in the Southern Hemisphere proved too much for him to handle, and only weeks into his voyage, Crowhurst deliberately slows his progress. He drifts and avoids storms, concerned for his well-being. In December, Crowhurst admits in his logbook that he can't complete the race. From this point on, he starts to keep 2 logs. One is his actual navigation log and personal ramblings. The other is a falsified log containing descriptions of a fictional round-the-world voyage. In the fake logbook, he aligns his reports with real weather patterns and ocean currents. He calculates plausible positions and speeds based on the time, conditions, and reports from his competitors. He updates race organizers with fabricated positions that suggest he's making solid progress toward the Southern Ocean. Crowhurst even includes navigational details to make them more convincing. It's mad genius. It would take quite a lot of work to construct a log like this. In January 1969, he reports rapid progress, claiming to round southern Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. He reports rough weather and strong winds to mirror the genuine challenges faced by his fellow competitors. He takes a leaf out of Robin Knox Johnston's troubles with his radio and says that his generator has stopped working and he has to turn off his radio at a time when he's sailing into the Southern Ocean. In reality, he stays in the South Atlantic, making small movements off the coast of Brazil to avoid detection. Radio transmissions from the other side of the world would possibly not make it as far as his actual location, so that would blow his cover. And I'm sure the pressure to keep reporting his position weighs on his mind, so it must be a relief to have a reason to stop sharing his progress. Spending months at sea alone, Crowhurst writes journal entries about time, reality, and cosmic beings. His writings show signs of the same struggle his mother had with her demons. He starts doubting whether his deception can succeed, but he continues to fabricate his progress, justifying it as a means of survival. From February 1969, there's a growing detachment from reality. Crowhurst begins to view himself as uniquely capable of navigating the moral and practical challenges of his situation, probably trying to convince himself that his ruse will work. In April, when Knox Johnston is the first to complete the race, Crowhurst grows increasingly worried that the world will find out the truth about his fake voyage. His personal writings become more fragmented, showing signs of depression and existential dread. He starts to question his own identity and place in the world, something that has challenged Donald from a young age. On the 24th of June 1969, Crowhurst writes his last log entry. "It is finished. It is finished. It is the mercy. I will resign the game." There's no official account as to what happened to Crowhurst. Given his deteriorating mental state with his journal entries, it's largely believed that he jumped off the Tynemouth Electron, taking his own life. In the context of sailing around the world, only making it to Brazil was a failure. But sailing solo from the UK to Brazil is an accomplishment in itself. If Crowhurst had thrown in the towel, he would have faced financial ruin and personal humiliation, something I think he possibly battled from a young age. By the time Knox Johnston finished the race and Tetley's boat capsized, Crowhurst realized his logbooks would have to stand up to the scrutiny of people who knew a lot more than he did, especially if his time was faster. In my mind, he could have potentially wrecked his boat on the rocks off the coast of Brazil, sending his logbooks to a watery grave. That would have released him from financial ruin and possibly the scrutiny that comes from winning. But I get the impression he was already too far down the rabbit hole he had created in his own mind. Knox Johnston was the only person to complete the race, winning the prize money and the trophy. He donated his £5,000 winnings to Crowhurst's family, saving them from financial ruin. The Golden Globe race exists in a similar form today. To honor its legacy, sailors are limited to the equipment that was available in 1968, and boats designed in the golden age of sailing.